pentatonic scales are arguably some of the most interesting scales for guitarists. And we spend an awful lot of time learning how to play the pentatonic scales up and down the fretboard. Now, historically speaking, pentatonic scales were some of the first scales that were written down, the first ones we kind of uncovered as we've been looking back at various different cultures. Today we base our music a little differently. We're basing it basically on an octave and the 12 notes between an octave. When we go to a major scale, we take that down to 7 notes in the octave. Well, a pentatonic scale is just 5 notes in the octave. And the idea is to be picking those notes that are the most interesting, that sound the best, if you like, within that octave. And so we do a kind of a reduction process. If we look at our major scale on our 4-note per string form, starting with a C note, right, very straightforward. Our pentatonic scale gets reduced to, what did we take out? Well, we took out the diatonic tritone. And so by getting rid of the 4th and the 7th, which provide that naturally occurring tritone, we made the pentatonic scale. We refer to that as the major pentatonic scale. And it's extremely popular, extremely well used. And remembering that the pentatonic scale, 5-note scale, can be any 5 notes, so we could have made it many different ways. But this particular one is the one we've adopted as associated with our major scale. The major scale, also known as an Ionian mode, is going to have a natural connection to the Aeolian mode, which is the natural minor, which has the exact same notes in our major scale and our major pentatonic, just with a different starting point. And so there's another pattern we can look at, and that's the minor pentatonic scale. Again, same notes as the major pentatonic scale, as long as we shift it down to where the Aeolian mode sits. So for C, that would be starting with A, and we would be able to do a, say in this case, a 2-note per string scale. We would start with A, and we have the same notes. They're just in a slightly different position. Of course, we can move that same pattern down to the C note. And we have our C minor pentatonic in the exact same region as we would have the a C major pentatonic. And that's pretty good. So obviously we can have a pentatonic scale for one mode, our starting mode of major or Ionian, and we can have that same idea transcribed to the natural minor scale, and in this case the parallel scale of C, we have the same form. Well, that's great. Does it work for any other modes? What if we went to my favorite mode, which is the Mixolydian mode, which again on our 4-note per string pattern is a major scale on the first string, and then it becomes the Dorian mode on the second string. Well, it's got a very major sound to it, Mixolydian, and so it's going to naturally work with our major scale. So the C major pentatonic is going to sit very well over the Mixolydian mode. Well, that's great. Not very interesting, but we get it. What if we looked at very carefully, though, the parallel minor scale? We would see that it starts out and it goes immediately to a flat third. Well, flat third is our big indicator that it's not a major mode. And so what if we extended that to a naturally occurring major third? Well, when we do that, we actually make a very interesting observation. The difference between the minor pentatonic and the Mixolydian scale is only that major third. The flat third becomes a major third, and all the rest of the minor scale notes line up perfectly. And so we get a really interesting new pattern, a new pentatonic that we can play. And if we play it just a little bit fancier, we can start it with our C. We can go immediately to the major third. major fourth, fifth, seventh, and then we have our C note again. Now, that seventh is the flat seventh. So normally we'd have had these two notes side by each, but we flatten that seventh in that minor scale. And so this idea of our Mixolydian pentatonic works really, really nicely, and we've found a new pentatonic scale that we can now add to our repertoire. And so we really have an interesting moment. With our Mixolydian scale, we can play the C major pentatonic scale over top. No harm, no foul, it's going to sound great. But we now also have an equally strong major sounding pentatonic that is going to work over all the notes of the Mixolydian mode. In other words, we have the Mixolydian pentatonic. And that is a really interesting thing to be able to do. We can find alternative pentatonic scales that we can play over top of the different modes, as long as we have a good set of analysis tools that we can use to sort of query the particular mode and ask which notes do we want to keep with it. Now this brings up a really neat idea. What is it that we have been getting rid of or toying with in these pentatonic scales? Well, some of our pentatonic scales will have notes that are always well separated, or at least every other note type scales. But we can also start adding in pentatonic scales where we do have semitone steps that get used in them. And so we have a lot of interesting ideas opening up onto how we can start building our pentatonic scales to work with other modes and other interesting melodies to bring out the beauty of the music.